every person should learn entry-level sales. I mean, every business person, because at the end of the day, especially in the world of AI, it's like the personal connections and personal relationships. That's the trump card. I can't tell you how many times, hey, let's grab a quick lunch, and before you know it, you hear something or you get an idea, and you don't know the direction until you look back. You're like, well, how did that happen? Well, I met this guy, and I met that guy, and he mentioned something to me, and I looked into it, and all of a sudden, like a year later, you see this whole different trajectory.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development. So we're here today with Jim Jacobs. He's an industry leader in market research and the CEO of Focus Insite, a 2 times Inc. 5000 company. He's worked in media and in real estate. Jim's a board member of EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, and he was a hockey coach for a very long time. Jim, thank you so much for coming on our show today.
My pleasure.
So, Jim, for people who don't know you, why don't you just give us a little introduction to yourself?
Sure. Well, you did a pretty good job of it. I have a crazy history, which is kind of wild, but you mentioned I am the CEO of Focus Insight. So we are a market research company. So you're like, well, what the heck is that? So we work with a lot of major companies, and they want insights to their problems in the market, whether it's a service or a business, we're doing a lot of AI studies right now, a lot of generative AI studies, but really something as simple as how many people sell water in a bottle, and one of the leaders is liquid death, which is kind of crazy, that story. But we've done studies for them, where you want to see people's reaction to a different type of label or how they want it packaged and things like that. So that's what we do for work. We are nationwide, and if you ever see, hey, do you want to make $150 for your opinions on on the latest soft drink, or we need people who have diabetes to give us their opinions on a new type of app or medication. We do a lot of that work. So super interesting field. Like you said, 2-time Inc. 5000 company, which is kind of crazy because when you get the award, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank sends you a video and he's like, you're one of only 4 companies out of 1,000 make the Inc. 5000. I was like, oh, wow. So we did that. I just got the Titan 100 for top CEOs in Philadelphia, so that was really, really cool. Just have a great team, hired some great people, and we stay at it every day. So,
well, that's awesome. Well, I want to dive in and hear your journey in business. So let's go back to the beginning. Why don't you just tell me about what did you go to school for? What were your plans for a career?
Sure. And the theme in this is you just got to keep pivoting and moving because it's pretty varied, right? So, funny looking back, I went to, I grew up kid in Overbrook Park, Philadelphia. Dad was a Philadelphia cop, and it was really neat. You learn stuff the Philadelphia way, go down to South Philly and where some of my relatives were from, and a few items had fallen off the back of a truck, and you kind of learn citywide how things worked, and it was great. Absolutely loved it, and ended up going to Malvern Prep, and went there and played hockey, and went to St. Joe's University from there, and then I was always the kid who kind of, all I knew was I wanted to make money, and I didn't know how. So I was always that kid who shoveled snow, who'd go run to Acme and try to help people with bags to their carts, or try to caddy, or worked at TGI Fridays, waiting tables and bussing tables. So did all those jobs, and it was kind of wild because I was putting myself through college and waiting tables at TGI Fridays with this crazy schedule because I'm playing hockey at the same time, supporting my course load, and no car, right? And so I'm trying to juggle all that, and I really felt like learning a business and the systems and the processes at TGI Fridays was almost one of the best courses I took, even though it wasn't a course. So from there, I had just decided I want to get in the working world, and had a number of different. I don't know how in depth you guys want me to go on it, but I've had a few different career paths and pivots throughout the past 30 years, and it's kind of wild where Steve Jobs says it, and I quote it a lot, but you can't connect the dots looking forward, but only backwards. So, a lot of the experiences we had in the past have been kind of rolled into Focus Insight, which has been my latest venture. So,
Well, yeah, you can give us kind of like the highlights of the different directions your career took along the way.
yeah, it was kind of wild. I worked at, I went to St. Joe's, and I'm waiting tables at TGI Fridays, like I said, and it was really such a great place in City Line Avenue because all the athletes would come in, all the TV anchors would come in from Channel 6 and Channel 10. And, there was no internet at the time. So everyone would wait to get your sports news and everything to watch the local sportscast. Well, now you just go on your phone, right? And like, these things are ringing all day. It's like, you don't even want to look at them. But it was just, the media was it was fragmented a lot differently back then. So I ended up, through the job at Fridays, interning at Channel 6, which became probably a 5-year career in television and sports production, and it was phenomenal. I just traveled the country, saw different, knew a bunch of the athletes back then. That was a lot of fun, and I'll never forget. I had to go down, and it was I'm waiting tables. It's like a Wednesday, and I was a shift leader on Wednesday, so I'm waiting tables on, or it was like a Tuesday. So I'm waiting tables on Tuesday. Gary Papa came in, God rest his soul. But Gary was the best. He comes in, I'm waiting on him. And I asked him if he needed interns. He said, "Oh my God, I need an intern, like right away." Like, okay, can come in Thursday. Sure. So I call the guy, he tells me to call. I come in Thursday, and I'm the intern. That was my interview, right? I waited on him every Wednesday, and meanwhile I get in. There's like a stack of resumes of these interns trying to get in with tapes and everything, and I'm just the waiter at TJ Fridays. I'm like, how the hell am I here? So I go in, and Warren Trent at the time, he was a producer, and he was off on Wednesdays and Thursdays, so it was just Gary, and he was like, "I need help with this, I need help with that." So I'm doing everything I can. He said, "All right, I need you to go down and get sound." Okay, what does get sound mean? So what I had to do was hold the microphone for Channel 6 and go up to the camera. And I'm like, okay, how hard could that be? He's like, "If you don't get the sound, don't come back. I want you asking this guy about this, and ask Patrick Ewing." I'm like, Patrick Ewing? So I'm sitting on a Wednesday, waiting tables at Friday, or Tuesday, waiting tables at Fridays. 2 days later, I'm sitting there in the locker room of the Knicks interviewing like Patrick Ewing, asking him like why he turned over the ball in the fourth quarter or something. I'm like, it was so shocking to me. But I keep thinking of that. If you don't get the sound, don't come back. And that has stuck with me until today. Like, just that whole attitude. Like, if you're not he's like, don't come back here if you don't get the sound. I was like, wow, if you don't. So when I go into a sales meeting or whatever, and listen, I've blown sales, I've screwed up this like everyone has, and things don't always go your way, but that mindset I found was so huge. And over time, you see, like, what's the worst that happens if you're starting at no, so the only thing you do get is a yes, and if you don't get a yes, that you're where you started anyway. So worked in TV, and then I was kind of sick of nights and weekends, and it was just the market had changed. Comcast had come out and bought the teams, and we ended up breaking that story. And I got an irate call. Oh my God, it's funny. I'm remembering this now. I end up. Who did we found out about the sale, the pending sale, that Pat Croce was involved, and that Comcast was looking to buy the Flyers and the Sixers. We got the league, and I called the PR guy for the Sixers, or no, we had Harold Katz's phone number at home, and we left him a voicemail. We wanted to comment. And this PR guy called and raked me through the coals. "I don't know. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't call Howard Cat's at home. You don't call this. You don't call that. I'm like, I mean, really berated me. And I'm like 25 at the time or 24. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. I got the PR director for the Sixers livid at me and just rake me over the coals. I'm like, pretty nervous. I didn't know what to do. I'm like, am I going to get fired or this? It turned out it was true. It turned out the next day, the announcement came out, and this guy didn't know.
Oh,
And Pat Croce came in and fired him pretty quickly.
he got fired.
Yeah, he did. He did. I won't mention names, but I was like, wow, it was just so crazy how a couple of days, changed. And so once Comcast had it, and I didn't want to work at Comcast. I mean, it was neat, but I decided I wanted, to get in more in a business setting, so I got my first job in sales, which I loved, and still do business development to this day for my company for sure. And yeah, that's kind of
Your job in sales. Which company was that for?
well, I worked for a company. My first job in sales was a telecommunication company, but that was like door to door. Like if you could fog a mirror, you could get that job, right? So it was, and it's the best. Every person should learn entry level sales. I mean, every business person, because at the end of the day, especially in the world of AI, it's like personal connections and personal relationships. That's the trump card, and that's where I think I was gonna say I'll get on my soapbox, but I'm on a podcast, so I guess I can get on my soapbox.
This is it.
But this is where we need people, to start getting back into social clubs and the Fiddler Club, the Union League. Like there's a bunch of stuff in Philadelphia, and not only that, but I remember we used to go to happy hours and on Thursdays and Fridays with the whole team in the office, and now everyone wants to work at home, but you just miss out on so many serendipitous meetings that kind of happen, when you're either a shared office space or, I can't tell you how many times, hey, let's grab a quick lunch. And before you know it, you hear something or you get an idea and you look back. And that's what I talked about earlier about Steve Jobs, about, you don't know the direction until you look back. And you're like, well, how did that happen? Well, I met this guy and I met that guy and he mentioned something to me and I looked into it. And all of a sudden, like a year later, you see this whole different trajectory, so.
Yeah, through those random connections and people you meet along the way.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's so hard sometimes to plan out exactly what your business strategy is, because there's so much of that random chance involved as well.
And one of my friends said this too, and I try to do this every year, right around around New Year. But he said it's a great exercise. So what's the blank slate theory? He goes, if you was doing your business today with a blank slate, what would it look like? Who would you get rid of? Who would you keep? What would you do? What would you not do? How would you start? How would you not? And when you're doing that, I reflect on the previous year. Okay, what were our biggest projects? How do we get those projects? Was it a referral? Okay, like how can we repeat that? What were our biggest mistakes? Okay, how can we not repeat that? So, yeah, for sure. I find that looking back and your relationships are key.
All right, so you were working as a sports producer, doing sales. How did you eventually go from all these different career paths to your market research business?
Yeah, that's kind of a wild story. So you see that right there?
That scar, yep.
That scar became Focus Insight, which was absolutely crazy. So I had my real estate business at the time, and I'm coaching a hockey practice for my son Jackson, who just turned 16. So anyhow, and he was a little guy. I think they were like 6 years old. Some kid comes flying behind me. My legs fly up. I land. I break my elbow.
Ooh.
I had to screw in the bone, And all of a sudden, I'm doing these real estate deals, and the same day, I got stiffed on a pretty big commission that I needed. And it was for a property I'd worked 2 years on. And real estate, commercial brokerage was just a cutthroat, brutal business. And I had all the paperwork signed, and I had every legal document you could have, but what the guy did was take money out of an LLC, so I get a judgment against an LLC with nothing in it. And it was a pretty significant sum of money. And I was so irate and I had a broken arm, and the doctor said, he put me on Vicodin. He goes, you can't leave the house for 2 weeks, So I was trying to keep that. And a friend of mine called me a few days later, and they had a market research business. And they said, hey, we have a study on Facebook. I'm like, what do I have to do? Just give your opinions on Facebook for 3 days when you're logging in, and what you think of it and what you think of the interface. I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking I'm doing it as for a friend. And they're like, okay, you'll get paid $250. I'm like, $250 to just do this for like 3 days? I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm on the couch anyway. Like, I can't leave the house. I was like, well, good. That'll help pay for the attorney fees so I can go chase the real money. And what happened was I did it a few days later, and I got the check, and I did another study for someone else. And all of a sudden I started kind of figuring out the model. I'm like, I could probably do this. And so I sent a blank email to a couple companies, and I found out that, one really needed a bunch of nurses, and was in an Avalon house with a bunch of nurses one summer, so I knew a bunch of them. And I said, hey, do you want to do this? You want to do that? And then I registered Get Paid Philly Nurses at the time, and the rest is history, per se. So I discovered that was a better business. The value of recurring revenue versus project revenue, of recurring clients against one-off clients, because how many, you do have some recurring real estate clients, but that market was it was very difficult. You only got paid when there was a sale, but I was really good at putting the pieces of a deal together. So I could put together that in the market research space, because it was mostly filled with really highly intelligent researchers, but not as much where you're going out and you're kind of putting all these pieces together, which is what I was able to do. And I got a lot of that from the commercial real estate side. So, at our height, we had about 45 people, and I started with 0 and a broken arm and a $20 bill. And, we hit the Inc. 5000 a couple times, multi-million-dollar company, all started from scratch, from 0. So it's been a crazy, crazy ride, ups, downs, lefts and rights. And, we had to have some layoffs when the whole market slowed down. Were we going bankrupt during COVID? We had no idea, because we were recruiting to people in facilities. Mm-hmm. So we had to do a huge pivot, which paid off well.
So going back to how you started, you said you registered a website talking to nurses. So were you reaching out to nurses, asking them the questions that their employers needed to know? Or?
Yeah. So what I did was I registered getpaidphillynurses.com, and I made a landing page. And all the nurses I knew, I said, hey, if all your friends want to get any studies for nurses, let me know, because I'm going to have a bunch of them. And I didn't have any. And then what I did was I went to a bunch of the medical companies and said, I have a whole database filled with nurses. Do you need any for your studies? They're like, oh my God, we do. So that was it, So you're kind of tiptoeing the line here. So you're saying, then what do you need? We need ophthalmologists for macular degeneration. No problem. We'll get them for you. I'm like, how do I get them? So, and that's the great thing about entrepreneurship, right? Like, you figure it out along the way. Yeah, I mean, you've heard all these things where it's like you're jumping out of a plane and then you build the parachute on the way down. It's so we've done that plenty of times, but but if you don't do it at the early stages, then it becomes huge Fortune 500 companies. And we've figured out ways, and I've had great relationships. And, it's wild when people tell us, you're the best vendor we've had in the past 3 years on this project. And we're like, wow, this has started with a $20 bill and a broken arm, and just a lot of perseverance. So,
did you have a game plan for the business when you started? You said you saw the structures at Fridays. Did you know when you started a business, like, hey, I want to grow it into this type of configuration, or was it more just kind of figuring it out as you go?
Do you know what goes according to plan? Nothing. So I absolutely did a quasi plan, and it changed every month. I mean, like stick to the plan, you stick to this. So yeah, we absolutely had a plan. It changed multiple times. We didn't hit metrics. We didn't do this. So you kind of see what's hot. Like originally, oh, we're going to focus just on patients in medical. And then all of a sudden we get this huge consumer, and then that's fun. So we started doing that. And then we got in the B2B vertical. And then we're like, let's just focus on getting the people. So that's kind of, it pivoted a few different times. But now we really focus on, and we have, we've had software development team working on this right now, past 14 months. So we have a whole AI generated part of the business where we can take a study that would take 3 weeks and do that in 3 hours. So labor cost goes down substantially, time to recruit goes down substantially. Really neat product for businesses who need to, they have a board meeting on a Friday, it's Monday, and they need to report why these podcast mics are not selling compared to wherever. So it's all speed to market, right? No one ever wants anything slower, but they always want it faster. So, a lot of the plans were rocky. I mean, you hire someone who's great, but they're great from 0 in revenue to 300,000, and then their jobs, their skill level can't get you past 300,000, and then you almost need someone from like 300 to a million, and then once you get past a million, they can't get you past there. Then you have a different person from 1 to 3 million, and then 3 to 10, and the numbers are kind of the same, but it's just, I've been to these EO events and they show you a picture. Here's us when we were 1 million. Here's us when we're 10 million. And all the people are different in the picture. And it's so true because people who have the skill set, like the people who get you here are not necessarily the people who may get you there. And that's really hard because you get loyal, you like these people, and you find out, and they get some title. And I'm just as guilty as this, but you give a person a title who starts off as a marketing assistant, and you make them a VP, but they don't have the skills to be a VP because they've never been a VP anywhere else. So it's just they know how you do the thing, but that doesn't make you VP if you can't go to a trade show, if you can't go actively hunt business, if you can't, and that's one of the things you learn is right now our number 2 person, Tammy Silberty. She has 29 years of experience in the field. She's amazing. She comes up with insights and ideas that no one has had. And that just comes from, a lengthy resume and countless projects and experience from the outside. So I've learned that too the hard way, that, sometimes bringing people from the outside is very necessary as you grow.
So you're really watching to see, like, is a person able to grow with the position, or when is it time to swap them out?
Yeah.
When would you say is like the warning signs that somebody needs to be swapped out of a position?
I've had this conversation a number of times. I thought turnover was bad. I thought, you wanted people for life. My friend, very successful entrepreneur, Nick, he told me, he said, Jim, you're dead wrong. Turnover is good. You get new ideas, fresh perspectives. And that is dead true. That is dead on, because what the most dangerous thing in life is the comfort zone, right? When you're comfortable, that's when, I think you always have to be uncomfortable, right? The saying is, get comfortable being uncomfortable. But if you're not growing, if you're not changing, if you're not going for something, then why are you there? And, and if you're comfortable, you can't attract the best talent, I read a lot, and that's what I said, like before the original culture was, hey, we're a family. I'm like, no, we're not a family. We're a sports team. We're Moneyball. Our team has a salary cap, right? The better our team, right? The more fans come to the stadium, or the more revenue we bring in, the higher the salary cap we can go. But we can't, we have a salary cap based on our revenues. Okay, labor can only be X. And yes, we might be able to get this person from Google, but we can't afford them because we're not doing billions in revenue. We're doing millions in revenue. Big difference. So over this, what I've learned is, turnover is good. I mean, your people are ultimately going to get you where you need to be, and you get the right people, your life is so great. But changing some people, like we've had this where, oh my goodness, we wish we made this change. You hem and haw over a change for 6 months or a year, and you're like, oh, but they've been here, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, this person's incredible. So one of the best things is, and I say it now all the time, hey, we're a sports team, we're Moneyball, we operate under a salary cap. Everyone's replaceable, starting with me. So even on the founder and CEO, I said, like, there's, and I always struggle with that too, right? Like if I was a private equity company or an outside CEO, is a pretty easy word problem to solve. Okay, you cut this, you do this, you do that. That being said, you have a loyal person, maybe there's a medical issue, maybe there's this. It's a lot cloudier, then you want to, I mean, at the ultimate day, it's kind of what we do for market research, right? There's qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative is the data, but the qualitatives are, a lot of the thoughts, feelings, and reasonings behind it. And it's hard to have one without the other.
So this is really interesting. What have you seen is the impact on your company's culture when you have this attitude of like, we are a sports team, we're performance based versus like the feel good, family friendly culture that a lot of businesses try to develop?
Yeah, I think that's a mistake of the whole family thing. Now, that being said, we have people with children, and they'll have maybe sometimes run an errand or a sport, but they're all professional. They know to get their work done. Like as long as they're getting their work done, there's no problem. There really isn't. We have someone on our team whose son wants to be in the Olympics, competitive swimmer. Comes on early every day, 6 a.m., has to leave like an hour early. Doesn't matter. Get your updates in. One of our top performers. So, and that's a great person because that's a person who runs marathons. Like, they're highly driven. So any sports team, you go in and you see what the standings are. So why don't we do that in business? Why don't we run the business like a locker room? I mean, through my experience in hockey and, one guy I worked with, he said the same thing. He played professional hockey for a long time. He said, when we walk in our locker room, we know where we are in the standings every single day. Every business should have that. And he's right. He's right. So, and I just think when you have that layer of accountability, one of my favorite books, if you ever read it, is The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack. And it's about gamifying your business, where you want to incent people on the same metrics that you are incented on, right? So profitability, like, revenue is great, but, it's, revenue is vanity, profit sanity, and cash is king. So that's it, right? Like it's kind of hard to explain to people the difference of, well, yeah, we had a big sale, but there's no cash in the bank, right? So the more you can help share metrics that drive the business success, I think people gravitate to it. I think people who have jobs want to be in a place where the business is growing. And if the business is stagnant, not growing, they're not A players. Mm-hmm. And your business is proportioned to the number of A players you have. I mean, so
that's really interesting. So did you have any mentors as you're like building out your organization?
Oh, for sure. I had a number of them. I mean, Gary Papa was a big mentor of mine. Mike Morris has been a friend of mine for forever. I met him golfing, and he started a company, Transport International Pool, and sold it to GE like 30 years ago. So he's old school, It's like he just got an iPhone a few years ago. But
what kind of problems were they helping you work through?
Well, I mean, the fundamentals of business are always the same. But our problems are typically, and there's things he doesn't understand, like, well, just go over to their desk and tell them, oh my God, we're in an all virtual environment. Well, how the hell do you? And it's like this whole after COVID, we just went virtual, and that genie's out of the bottle. We have people work out of their homes, and but in terms of mentors, Mike has been fantastic. And through Entrepreneurs Organization, there's so many different people you meet, and it's kind of wild. Because you meet some incredibly smart people, and you're like, holy Toledo. And then you meet some incredibly successful people, and you're like, that guy's really that successful? Like, there's nothing that special about him. Same guy, So, and I'll tell you what, a great mentor to me lately has been my favorite person ever, ChatGPT. Oh my goodness gracious. I load up, I have a custom GPT, and it gives me a lot of clarity on things. I'm like, wow, I didn't think of that. So that's my new mentor. But I'm lucky. I have an informal board of advisors, which is my cell phone of pretty much any problem I have. There's a lot of people I could call and get some sort of feedback on. Like, I have a couple friends who are high-level chief financial officers or HR. Hey, could you help me with this problem? So that's really good. So
that's cool. You say that about ChatGPT. It's like a patient tutor, like anything you need to learn. It's a great starting point for ideas. And
yeah, and another thing too is, like Google LLM notebooks. It's pretty wild. Like, if there's an author or something you like, you can load it up with a bunch of YouTube clips or whatever, and you can chat with that and get some summaries. It's listen to podcasts. It's pretty neat. So
that's cool. All right. So what is your favorite piece of advice that you would like to share with business owners who are trying to grow a successful business?
Oh man, lean and mean, right? So lean and mean. So one of the mistakes I made was going for revenue before profitability, and it's almost like, number one, focus on your gross margin. And the other thing too is you gotta be ready to take some risks, and I don't mean, like, one of the things I hate, and I don't know about you guys, but I like going to casino, but I will not gamble. And like, why would you want to go to a casino? Well, I like going to shows or something, or a concert, or getting a good meal. But I feel like I gamble all day in the business. It's always selected gambles. So when you're starting off and scaling, you gotta, number one is really the right people, right? I mean, if you just gotta really take your time. I remember I paid the biggest idiot tax in the world. Sometimes I hire 2 people a day, 3 people a day, and it was just kind of, you talk to them, you thought they were good, okay, hired. And then all the problems you had a couple months later, and I'm like, oh my God, idiot tax, So now we make it extremely difficult for us to get a job, because we really got to, we put people through all these tests and all this stuff, because we really got to make sure you have the right fit, because it becomes, once they get in your culture, and a culture killer will kill you, So it's almost like, we have a strong team culture that, strong is our core values, but that gets very, very difficult when you have a culture killer or someone who is just watching the clock or is not aligned. I mean, this is like the Dadville Regatta, right? You need all the people in their departments rowing the boats in the same direction. And I feel like the majority of your problems seem to be people problems. So getting the right people in the right seats on the bus is huge. And if I could go back in time, the ability to cut people quickly is something I wish I could have done, because I could have, stitch in time saves 9. So
that's awesome. Well, we got more episodes coming up. Jim, thank you so much for coming on our show and telling your story. If somebody wants to learn more about Focus Insight or get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Shoot me an email, jim@focusinsite.com. That's FOCUSINSITE.com. Or shoot me a text to my cell, 267-446-3707. So,
all right. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.